Hello and welcome to the Do the Best Work of Your Life video series. I'm Carissa, editor of HR Magazine, and this series is brought to you in partnership with the Access Group, which offers technology to help businesses work better and smarter. Throughout this 10-part series, we're going to be exploring how artificial intelligence, AI technology, can help HR leaders focus on what matters most, people. Today's conversation is episode 6 in a 10-part series, so don't forget to go back and watch all the other episodes. For now, though, we're going to be talking about learning and development. Let's get into it. So what's the current landscape like in the learning and development space? Idris, what are the key challenges for HR leaders when they're considering how to align L&D with their organisational goals?
First challenge, I would say, is trying to get that discussion at the top table. So with your leaders is actually making sure that how often do we talk about learning at the executive or board level to say, actually, what does learning look like today? And what does it look like in the future? I think with that, the understanding of learning and development in the organisation is quite something to work on, almost a branding of learning and development. So really looking at what does learning mean? For some, it's just a training course and a come back. Others, it's actually more than that. It's on the job. It's kind of going to a conference. It's also learning about something online. It's about speaking to another colleague or getting some tips on how to handle a meeting. Getting that understanding across to the organisation is another challenge. And then the obvious one is about resources and budgets, really. How much do you spend on learning and development? And then with that, how do you make it fair across the organisation, especially if you're small or large? How do you ensure every employee gets a fair access to learning and development?
Yeah, I mean, I just saw some research from the Fosway Group, which was saying that 84% of L&D professionals have had their budgets cut. So definitely money is an issue. But also, as you highlighted, it's skills, isn't it? How do you then map who has this right skills in your organisation? Do you think it varies from different types of organisations?
So it does vary with different types of organisation. It, for me, depends on that HR lead at the top. How important do they prioritise learning and development across the different HR specialisms? And with that, if they prioritise it, they will naturally make sure it's led at the right level in the organisation.
Yeah, I actually think it's also a little bit about how creatively people view learning and development. I can see some really good, powerful learning going on with some of our clients that actually hasn't cost a lot. I think it's about really thinking about the skills, the culture, the strategy, and trying to kind of do what you've got. But obviously, if you've got technology to aid and help as well, you've got efficiencies that you can create. Although there's an initial investment in the technology itself, I think you can actually really leverage that and actually go a lot further.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are the tools that can help to meet that challenge?
Yeah, exactly. So I think pre-AI, to set up a whole learning course, to update materials, to set up that program, everyone thinks that's massive investment. But the AI is great at taking large amounts of information, boiling it down quickly and breaking it into pieces. So you can get really bespoke training courses that are really fit for purpose and easy to update. When a regulation changes, you can just have it automatically update that stuff. So you can do it now at a scale that you could never do before. As I said, you've got to invest in the tech, but once the tech is there, the ongoing management and maintenance of those programs and training are absolutely accelerated through AI, because that's its absolute sweet spot.
And it's a game changer, I think, for teams that don't actually have L&D teams or an L&D professional that specialises in that area. If I, as a generalist, was then looking to do some content, actually having the tools and the AI and the technology that could help pull some of that together, feed in the values of the organisation, really kind of get the tone of it right, etc. Amazing. And it's something that I wouldn't probably be able to do without the help of that. So hopefully it would upskill a lot of sort of smaller companies that don't have in-house L&D professionals as well.
But how does that work in practice then, Idris? Because, if people are struggling to learn how to integrate and really professionalise their L&D offering, and maybe they don't even have that access to these tools in the first place, what advice would you give to them?
To start at the beginning and be realistic, I think a lot of HR, we sometimes don't set the expectation, But when we do, it's a bit where we're reaching for the sky, almost being realistic and saying, look, here's where we are in the L&D journey, and here's where we want to get to. But this is what it's going to take, because no one else can do that but the HR and the L&D specialists, really. So I think that's the most important bit. And I think there's a big part of it that we need to take the organisation with us as HR professionals and say, look, here's where we're going. Come along, talk to us as well. We want to hear your input. I think that's really, really valuable. And I think just touching on what you two said about the creation of content, one of the problems or challenges, but there's so much learning that happens in the world, but in the workplace, there's so much there. 90% of it is just sitting there. And that's where technology, AI can really, like Ollie said, get through it and get you that very quickly rather than searching through files and when did we do this?
And that's exactly it, right? Because if you've got all of that massive information, nobody reads everything. No one starts at the beginning and goes all the way through to the end.
You didn't read your company handbook from start to finish?
I didn't do all of that training. But you know, again, because you can index everything, if I need to know something right now, AI can get to the bottom and say, right, this is the one thing, you're asking me a question, I can deliver that snippet of training in that moment, which, you know, the problem is if it's a 45-minute course or an hour-long course and it's end-to-end about everything, you forget it within a few weeks of doing it, right? Whereas to reinforce that learning in that snippet mentality after having that course, it's really easy to edit that stuff using AI and serve it up in the moment to people. So I think that's a real game changer in terms of productivity, but also in the moment training.
Yeah, I think it's really powerful for HR teams as well, knowing that managers can be supported at the time of need. As you said, if you've got to do a process where you might have had training on it 3 or 4 years ago, or you may never have had actually a course on it, to actually be able to ask questions or have a look at the situation and try and get some guidance and some support before actually then maybe talking to HR as well. I mean, it shouldn't remove the human in all of this, obviously, but I think it's a great support to kind of upskill and get that foundation-based knowledge and a steer at the time that you need it, rather than trying to look back on course notes or try and look for a policy somewhere.
But what is that entry point then, Ollie? Because you know, Idris was saying start at the beginning.
Exactly.
What is the beginning?
Yeah, I was going to pick up on that because, again, I think it's about setting realistic expectations of what you can achieve and when. And I think this is the same with all AI technology, right? I think certainly in HR and learning, you know, there's always that initial leap, and it's like you kind of want it to be fully automated, doing everything, and you know, making you breakfast as well as you know, directly implanting the information in your head, right? I mean, it's not going to be that from day one. You need a culture of change, and you need to start somewhere. Start small, move on. And I would say there's some really simple things that you can start with, right? You've got probably hundreds of hours of learning material, right? That's sitting there, right? You can start just by getting AI to look at that and index it and understand what you've got and look at the transcript behind and just see what happens. Just see what happens when you turn around and say, right, tell me a little bit about this specific compliance. And it can break it down for you, and you'd be amazed. You don't have to do a lot to get a lot of value early on, but what you have to do is take the first step, right? You have to take the first step. And so depending on your priority and what you're looking at, I guarantee you the first thing you should look at is what have you already got, and how can you leverage what you've got and use AI to either update it or to make it more bite-sized so that it's easier for your organisation to do it in small pieces rather than a 90-minute course on a Friday that nobody really wants to be doing.
I hear that. So start out by reviewing what you've got and seeing how you can maximise that potential.
Yeah, and I think it makes it more accessible as well that way. So I know, back in the day, none of the senior team would ever turn up for any training courses and things because the day job gets in the way. The learning's really important and they may well prioritise it, but it often happened that you'd got lots of last-minute cancellations on courses. This means actually that it's accessible when you need it and flexibly, with lots of homeworking and stuff as well. I think that's a big challenge over the last kind of few years. It's how do you deliver really good learning right from people starting with the business all the way through and keep them engaged and see that they've got a career with the organisation. That's quite hard to do and something that managers do sometimes struggle with. So having technology that can also kind of pinpoint that piece as well. I think a lot of organisations are recruiting for skills at the moment. They don't have ready-made people to go into those particular jobs, and there's lots of new skills, new jobs coming out as well. So I think, again, this is really important that actually you can get people quickly skilled up and actually, make sure that they can deliver the roles as quickly as you need them to, and create these new skills and competencies, and leverage that learning.
Absolutely, and learn where your skills are most needed within your organisation. I guess.
Yeah.
How does that work for you then, Idris? Like, how are you finding skills mapping in your role?
I find that it's, looking back on my experience, it's a very useful exercise to do. I think it's not done often enough, but I think what I'm trying to look at in the future, or even now, is making sure that it's not that one exercise you focus on. It's learning happens every day. I mean, you've got people doing either massive amounts of learning in the age of podcasts, that we've got people learning inside, outside of work. And I think that the challenge for me or for a lot of professionals is that how do we make sure that learning isn't just a skills mapping exercise? Because that data might go, it might become obsolete after a week, maybe a month, 6 months. And then we need to keep update on that journey. And I think that's where I would say a lot of systems can help line managers to actually not have to remember everything, but your conversations can be there of actually this person not even asked for support. They were talking to me about their performance, and I noticed actually they might need a bit of coaching here or a bit of mentoring. So, I think tools, especially tech and AI, can help managers leverage their decision making with the information they can hold and provide them. And I think it's really a place where I think skills mapping, yes, good. But how do we get the conversation of L&D learning happening on not every day, but on a regular basis is what I would say.
It sounds like you're also saying that the people agenda and the people leaders are super key to this process. And it's not just a case of, buy in this tech and it's okay, it will sort out my L&D for me. This is great.
Yeah. I think the tech is an important part, but that's just the start, really. Yeah. How you manage the tech, how you design it. We need to get and be honest with ourselves when we're introducing systems as HR professionals. If we haven't got the expertise, let's bring it in to make sure that system is set up right and delivered right, because once that's done, it makes the journey a lot easier. A lot of systems fail when it's just rushed in and we're getting an L&D platform and then courses just sit on there, no one's engaging with it, and then it's just, unfortunately not useful for the organisation or its employees, really. So the people leaders, I think, as much as they hold the kind of overall accountability, I go back to the point I said was, how do they bring leaders in? How do they bring the workforce in and say, look, we want you to learn, and here's how and here's why.
I think
Hard nod there from Zoe. Go on.
I think they can demonstrate the real value of it as well. I think there's key metrics that HR leaders and L&D leaders can look at. Obviously, how long people stay, internal moves as well, so the career development piece, but engagement in the actual learning as well. As you said, I think it's so important that people think about the end user in all of this. Are they going to be doing bite-sized bits via a mobile phone, or are they going to be sat there doing things that are slightly different? And how do we encourage people to actually record the informal learning?
Right. And that's what I think we've kind of almost democratized learning. I mean, the whole thought that you could be an author of some content, right? If you think, I've got to think about accessibility, I've got to think about languages, I've got to think about the graphics, it's almost, pre-AI, it's almost impossible to imagine that within 5 minutes you can record something that's useful, that's valuable, that is of high quality, and as soon as that goes out of date, as you were saying, they're keeping things out of date, but you can do that en masse with AI, because it understands the language and it can go in and update and interpret it and make sure it stays current. So again, it's really, you can do this at scale, and I love the idea of democratizing it to the point where everyone can become a creator of learning, because that really creates a culture of learning in your organization, and it's really scalable, and it really that's more engaging than really long courses that are sort of top-downy and very kind of,
Absolutely, and when you can have a kind of Netflix approach to it as well, or it's you've done this, we would recommend you look at this, or you get your peers saying, I just did this is really good, I recommend you do it, then it starts to build that culture and that excitement about learning.
Yeah, because we all need to be more excited about integrating your learning as well, and helping people to get those skills, because it's also about the business organisational goals, right? Yeah. We need to be plugging those gaps in our organisations to help achieve the business goals, but also the people goals from the employee perspective. You want to make sure that they're getting the best out of their...
But it's moving so fast, right? I mean, there are skills and roles that you wouldn't even imagined a year ago, like prompt engineers and all. There's just skills that every organisation need that you didn't even know. And so to stay on top of the rate of change is super difficult unless you've got a scalable way to leverage your people. You've got you've already got an expert in your business somewhere who really understands AI and prompt engineering. Well, make them professionalise that output and distribute it to everyone. So again, you can really leverage, especially those new skills, because it's really hard to get formalized training on some of this new stuff that's coming out. And I think it's a much more scalable way to really engage your organisation to be part of that learning process.
It sounds like we're talking a lot as well about experts versus entry level, and everyone should be able to access these tools, but at the same and learning, but at the same time there are specialists that need to be guiding this or having an overarching kind of view. And I'm wondering how those two things interact. Hopefully I'm making sense here.
Yes.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
I think there's definitely got to be the kind of business objectives and strategy at the heart of everything. Obviously, L&D and HR professionals have got really good at making sure that they're underpinning that and delivering that piece, but really making sure that you're measuring that actually the things that you're trying to achieve strategically are being delivered by the learning. And small tweaks, I think it's constant feedback and small tweaks. We're not taking humans out of this. There needs to be constant kind of review, even if it can keep things up to date for you. Is the delivery methods working? Is the style working? Is it hitting the right audiences? Are people engaging? If not, why? So you need to be able to get that feedback as well. But looking at the metrics, and you should be able to track it all the way back through to your strategic goals.
And how are
as
your
well.
clients? How are your clients achieving that? Is it working for people?
It is. It does take a while. It does take a while, and sometimes a big culture shift. I think if people haven't. If they're quite traditional in their learning and development previously and they're moving towards this, it's quite hard to get people to actually start on that journey. But once people get into it and they see how easy and how bite-sized things can be, and actually see themselves developing and growing and having opportunities to do new projects or potentially go for internal moves as a consequence, then it's about celebrating that and actually sharing that internally, maybe sharing that as part of your strategy to attract as well. But it becomes quite powerful when people have got internal stories around how they've used it and how it's really helped them.
I think it's building that excitement, like you said before,
yeah.
isn't it? And staying on that excitement point, I wonder how important personalisation is to this conversation. Idris, I don't know if you can explain why is it important to personalise learning in organisations?
I think as much as we try and think of the organisation as a collective, it's a sum up of individuals. And each one of us is going to have a different perception of learning. Some of us will have gone to college and not gone to university, and not. We've all had different experiences. And I think to recognise that, and we're all going to go in different paths, some known and unknown, but I think to actually personalise it, you're going to be meeting the needs of the person. If you go generic and say, we think the organisation needs project management, and you've got someone sitting there that actually has project management certification, and then it's sitting there, why do I need this? But then when you go to that person, they actually need to know how to, run an effective meeting, for example. It changes the picture completely. So personalisation, I think, not just in learning, but from a range of aspects, is very important for people, performance, engagement, inclusion. It runs across that. If we can meet individual needs, the natural maths is that you get the organisation in the shape that you want it to be. So for me, very important.
That goes back to that scalability thing, right? If you wanted to try and personalise at scale for your organisation to meet the needs of every individual and their own development and career path, it's just, to put people on that would just take way too long, right? This is a scalable, AI can really do that en masse for an organisation, right? Because it treats every person individual, can feed them the bits that they need to suit their own career path. Whereas if you had a person having to map and manage everything and create their content and lay it out for them, it just wouldn't work.
Or you'd have to buy in more people. You'd have to have more resources to deal with that.
Right.
So it's an efficiency, isn't it?
Massive efficiency.
But I've seen manager confidence grow as well, where you've not got that natural skill set to coach and look at careers and skills and competencies. If it just doesn't, if that's not part of your skill set, yet you are a manager and you're a people leader. Having technology support that and make suggestions and really help take that pressure off a little bit. So you've kind of got a buddy, you've got a guide, you've got someone who's helping you do the content, the suggestions, getting the feedback. That's really powerful as a manager. So you're not completely starting from scratch. Or
we're always saying in HR, aren't we, that that we need to empower our managers more.
Definitely.
So that's a really key point.
And then as a learner, if I already know 70% of a course content, and I'm having to sit through an hour of this course, it's going to switch me off and I'm not going to want to do it. If it knows, actually, I've already done this, or I'm good at this, or it's a key part of my role, or it's tested me in some way, and I only need to do the last like 30%, great, that's the bit I need, that's the bit I need to know.
But we should give kudos to HR and learning, because in our own research, we sort of see the benchmark is around 55% of leaders think that the AI is going to significantly improve productivity, whereas it's 68, I think, in our own surveys that we put out. And this is exactly one of the reasons why. So again, we're embracing that tech to deliver real outcomes that really matter. And I think learning is one of those ones where you can make a real difference by leveraging AI. I think it's an exciting time to be in this space.
I think just on that bit, the one thing we forget learning, the day job still has to happen.
Yeah.
And good workplaces build in learning in job design where people have got space to learn. Because if you haven't got the space to learn, no learning is going to happen really. So I think that bit of using tech and AI where people do have limited time, we'd love to go on a course for a week and do that, but we've probably got a few hours a month if we're fortunate. So I think with tech and AI, I think it definitely helps that piece of people not having the time to learn, and actually allows them to say, actually, I can do this, like you said, so in 15 minutes.
Yeah, so massive time save. That's your key takeaway.
Like my mum says, it's a shame the book doesn't come with the time to read it, right? That's and it's the same thing with training, right? That, and learning. It's sort of the more you can make it fit around the individual, the more they're going to benefit from it. So it's again, we're not taking it out of the human. We're actually making more humanizing training to fit everybody's needs.
Yeah, and it might be more practical for me if I'm an evening person to be doing it at 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah. We're not advertising that, but thank you so much, guys, for your time and your expertise. It's been amazing to hear about how technology can really help leaders feed into their work and do the best work of their lives. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you.